This is Beyond the Green Screen, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Well, welcome to Behind the Green Screen. It's the Arizona Family First Alert Weather Team podcast. Isn't that fantastic?
That's amazing.
And beyond the green screen is we're taking you beyond the green screen that we normally stand in front of, which is kind of inside, but whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how you doing?
I'm doing good, man.
Michael Binsky has been shooting video and still photography of weather for, I'm going to say, 15 years plus.
Yeah, right around there. Probably started 2009 where I started trying to pick up a camera.
Yeah, because I remember I would all of a sudden I was seeing this guy on Twitter named Michael Binsky who was getting these really rad shots of lightning or flooding, and I was like, hey, could we use that video? And I would call you up, or I'd say, hey, do you have eyes on that storm? What's it doing?
You did. After a while, after we got to know each other, you would. I would be down by Casa Grande and be like, Royals calling. I'm like, oh, yeah, it looks pretty, the visibility's pretty decent. How's that dust doing? Yeah, you were always curious. It was awesome.
But it was also cool because like we could see the outflow boundaries, but we couldn't see the dust up here. And so I go, Mike, do I need to worry about launching the helicopter? He goes, no, that's nothing. Don't worry about that. So
now, after this much time, I would probably say that, and you'd be like, well, actually, that was pretty decent. I'm like, not in my book.
Not in his book,
like
no.
way too, my standards are just way too high now.
How did you get interested in weather photography? I know you've always been interested in photography, but what about weather?
Well, actually, it's kind of the opposite.
Oh, really?
I've always been interested in weather since I was a little boy, since my dad was interested in weather. So, grew up, I'm from Phoenix.
Yeah.
So my dad would watch monsoon storms in the patio. And I like this story because it took me a while to figure it out. After I was into photography and doing storm chasing, I heard another guy talk about his origin story of a tornado tearing up his family's trailer park.
Yeah.
And then he and his brother were just, by the time they got teenagers, they were fascinated with tornadoes. And it's kind of a weird opposite thing, right?
Yeah.
So you would think. I still have a memory from when I was like 7, 8 of a lightning bolt while hitting right behind our house while my dad and I were sitting out there watching the storm. It must have just been like 100 feet or so because it was so bright. Mm-hmm. And when I started getting into photography with weather, it was lightning. That was what I wanted to start shooting.
Right.
And I never made that connection until I heard that guy's story. I'm like, why am I so fascinated by this? And so that kind of explained it. So that I've always loved the weather. All my friends are always, you should have been a meteorologist.
You should have been
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you say the same thing.
Yeah.
And people have been saying that to me since I was 19 probably. And but I think it was, in a way, it wasn't as much about the weather and the math and the physics and the science as much as I like to share it with people.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was kind of a weird realization for that. And my neighbors at the time, back in, I don't know, early 2000s or something, they always made fun of me because there was this dust storm coming once. And I called them on the phone and I just go, incoming. And I don't remember what else I said, but they're like, you just called and said incoming because a storm was coming. And I'm like, yeah, that was super nerdy and weird.
Yeah.
But it was like, I like to share it. So photography became this avenue to kind of share it. And then the time-lapse videos and stuff became even more of myself, kind of videos and music and kind of trying to create a mood or a feeling.
And so this whole time, and I'm going to call it pre the big one, and post the big one. The big one being one of the biggest dust storms that ever hit Phoenix. That this guy,
the biggest.
Yeah, I think you're right, the biggest. But beforehand, how were you? Honing your craft. What were you doing? Was it mainly about buying the right equipment or trying to figure out what equipment worked, or what were you doing?
I think I was trying to just figure out what I liked. If I go back to those early photos before 2011, it's just a lot of kind of garbage clouds and things that I was like, ooh, they look really, but not even really an idea of what looked good or what part of the storm was great. Now it's like I see these swirly clouds, I'm like, whatever, but I see a big downburst over the desert. I'm like, that looks dramatic, So I was kind of honing that stuff, and I think just trying to find my way, figure out photography in general. I believe in 2010 or 11, I shot my first wedding, so I was learning how to just use the camera in general for other things, and then when the dust storm hit, it was trying to, okay, I like doing stills of lightning and this stuff, but I want to try time lapse because I want to see what a dust storm looks like, because I'd only ever seen TV stations and news film it from a helicopter or from a ground camera, and it never was sped up or had a lot of dynamics to it.
Yeah. So The big day. Were you just out chasing? It was kind of a regular day, or were? I remember you telling me the story. It was the complete opposite.
Complete opposite. I had been out for a few days before chasing, and back then my daughter was probably only like 4 years old, so this was not a job or a career. So being away from the wife and kid was not like, oh, I'd just be gone for a week. So I've been chasing for a couple of days, and I'm like, well, I'm going to stay home tonight. You know, give the family a break.
Yeah.
But I was practicing time lapsing. I had done one the day before, and then I just set one up in the backyard because I believe at the same time there were storms rolling in from the northwest side, which I kind of forget about. And so I had a camera kind of pointed that way. But then I got a text or something from someone out at Santan Valley going, look at this, Mike, check out this dust storm rolling over the Santans. And I was like, whoa, that looks pretty good. But it didn't look anywhere. It still didn't look like it did when it hit downtown.
No.
So I'd already scoped out a parking garage nearby, and it was literally a quarter mile from where we lived, McDowell and 7th Street. So I just went right down a half mile, quarter mile, got on top, set up the camera. And by that time, it was already about to crest South Mountain.
Right.
And, you know, it was, it was insane that you know, sometimes in life sometimes people say better to be lucky than good. I wasn't good at the time at time lapsing because it's like my third one ever, but I was lucky, and I also made a lot of connections with people who knew I liked the weather, who were like, Mike's going to want to see this, so I had a good like network of people. But I'm still so thankful and happy that I happened to be there that day.
And it turned out that the really quote unquote apocalyptic part of it was just as it made it into downtown, because we watched it on ADOT cameras coming in, and it was a regular. It was a good dust storm. Yes. But then all of a sudden it just.
I don't know what it was about it.
Yeah.
You know, I know at the time that we had like major drought. There had been 0 storms other than like the day before was a weak one that never made it past like Casa Grande. I was shooting it from a distance, and then that one was just a big line of severe thunderstorms in the first part of it. It was July 5th, so the first part of the season. So the dust was just dry and ready. And it was, 65, 70 mile per hour winds, which really helps for it to look good. And it was just after the sun went down, so it had a little bit of that bluish gray. I don't know.
A little more depthness to it or something.
It was just, but it was still like, it was just, and at the time, getting into this, I was like, this is so great looking that I'll finally get on the Weather Channel. Because that's what, grow up as a kid, I watch daily on the 8s and Weather Channel all the time just because. Yeah. And I'm like, this might be something good enough for the Weather Channel. Yeah. And little did I know it was good enough for like every station.
Yeah, I was going to say, little did you know the next day I got up in the morning and turned on CNN, and there's my buddy Mike talking. And you literally, first of all, it made Phoenix famous in a sense for that kind of weather.
Yes.
People thought that should have destroyed the city. It looked like it should have. It didn't.
Oh, yeah.
But you literally were interviewed around the world.
Yeah. I mean, I did a couple CNN interviews. I actually did 2 live interviews on the Weather Channel besides them just putting up the video. So that was even more terrifying. I'm like, we're going on live? I don't know if I can do this. Can we do a taped one? But I did it.
Yeah.
And then people were, I think that night, the next night, I feel like it was one of the NBC Brian Williams, somebody said, captured by Michael Binsky or something. I'm like, one of them, I'm all, that guy just said my name on national TV. That was crazy. So, that was just, but not even, the big stuff was really cool, but it was like, I had a teacher from the Philippines, this woman emailed me and asked me if she could show it to her classroom. Wow. And then asked questions, hey, was it terrifying? Were people running, screaming in the streets? And I'm all, no, they were just driving home from work. And there weren't a lot of accidents that I heard of.
No.
So surprisingly, it was not that bad, but it sure looked, it was for dust storms, it was bad in terms of, next day, I lived in a 100-year-old house with this guest house out back, the guest room coated in dust from all the cracks. The gas pumps dried dirt on them from the dust, and then the rain that actually came with it pretty quick. So it was pretty messy.
It was pretty much a 10.
Yeah, it was a 10.
It was pretty much 11. A 10. It was one of the best ones. So was it just before this time in 2011 or just after where you started to think, hey, maybe I could do this for a living? It
was after that. I thought if I was going to do photography for a living, then I'd have to shoot weddings because to pay for the storm stuff in general. because that's where the money is. I can't make money selling pictures.
Right.
But then, when the dust storm happened, obviously within a day or so, people were emailing me to license it for stuff. I mean, it made a couple bucks for it being on like TV or whatever, but I think I had an air conditioning company that week, a local Arizona, air conditioning company said, we want to use it for a commercial. Haboob hits your house, get your air conditioner clean.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember when it happened, maybe a few months later, but Al Gore's people for his climate change talks that was going on at the time, they wanted to license that. And I'm like, what? You want to use this and you'll pay me how much? And oh my Lord. And so after that, I'm like, well, I really like doing this. This is really fun. And I had no idea really. I didn't know anything about stock footage and stuff like that. So people were going to pay me for this. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just try to go out and get more and focus on this. And so that's kind of what happened. And so for the next couple of years, that's what I did. I just would time-lapse stuff, and I licensed a little bit here and there. That was, they weren't anything great.
Oh, he says it wasn't anything great. You were in one of the Loki movies, right?
The Thor one.
Thor movie, right.
Not Loki, but Loki was in it. But yeah, that was 2 years later in 2013.
Yeah.
And that's where I had decided to start. I had started chasing out in the plains in like 2009, 2010 with just no success one day. 2013, we were going for 3 days, and it was my buddy Andy and I, and it was the day we woke up at 6 a.m., flew to Denver, rented a car, drove down from Colorado into Kansas, into Oklahoma Panhandle, into Texas, and we finally get out and we see this most incredibly gorgeous supercell. And I had never seen, kind of a full-fledged mothership kind of supercell before.
Right.
And it was apocalyptic looking. It was like this greenish orange that we had, harvested cornfields in front of us. There was dust getting pulled up because it was dry. And that was another video I put together, and a week later when I posted it went viral again, and I didn't really expect that. But, and that one was even more viral than the dust storm one because I don't know why, it just hit all these blogs and went around, and Thor 2, The Dark World licensed it, and it's still licensed to this day for all kinds of stuff. It's been in multiple, it was in one of the disaster movies, the satellites from space.
Oh, yeah, I know
with,
which one
what's
you're
his
talking
name?
about. Yeah.
Gerard Butler?
Yeah,
Butler?
yeah.
Yeah, so whatever that one was.
He's up there saving mankind.
Yeah, at the beginning they have a montage about how the climate and all this stuff, and they flash videos in my clips there too. So I'm like, this has been in 2 movies now, and maybe another one. But so that was, but what it really did for me was, hey, I got something finally that I really was happy with, and then people wanted to license it again, and so I'm like, I'm on the right path, so let's just keep going and see what happens.
And so I think, let me ask you this. It seems to me, and talking with you and your sort of style of chasing, and first of all, we'll talk about how chasing is not glamorous at all.
No,
it's hard work.
It's very hard work.
But you seem to take what I would say is sort of an alternate view to chasing. You don't mind staying a distance from a storm to maybe catch an entire supercell. You don't mind that, do you?
No, it's kind of, as a photographer, that I am more out there to, as my business became a business, time-lapsing and stuff became something I had to capture. You can't necessarily get that when you're showered in rain and hail.
Yeah.
Or the middle of a dust storm.
Right.
So when a dust storm hits, I'm not going to just sit in there and time-lapse it forever. I'm going to get back out in front and do it again.
Right.
So the same thing. When I'm on a supercell or a storm, I don't want to be in the rain. So I do sometimes need to be a little bit away, a little out of it. Yeah. And so, but I don't mind it because for me, it's always been about like the beauty and the stunning nature of these things.
Yet, I've also given you calls when I've said, Michael, aren't you a little too close to that lightning bolt you took a picture of?
You would have. Are you afraid of lightning?
No, I'm not afraid of it, but I have a very high degree of respect for it. No, yes. I do.
I'm pretty terrified of it, honestly. It's kind of weird. But I had this last year in spring, June 2nd, we were in South Texas, like almost Mexico.
Oh, I've seen this clip. Okay.
But I had my 2 tour guides with me, and I had these Nat Geo Canon photographers follow me because we're making a film for Canon. And we get on a tornado drops south of the last highway in Texas that you could possibly get on, and it's going to go into Mexico. And we didn't even realize. So anyway, the tornado drops. We have nowhere else to go. We get out to shoot it, and the anvil's over us, and there are lightning bolts striking all around us. Every 3 or 4, I'm not even kidding, every 3 or 4 seconds, there's a lightning bolt, and it's not, it's kind of between us and the storm. It was behind us, over here, just over here, and I would set up a camera, time-lapse, and then I would jump in the back of my Forerunner, and I'm yelling at people. I'm like, hey, this is very dangerous.
Yes.
Like, you guys are with me. Like, I don't want anyone to get struck by lightning and then blame me. So just know if you're out here, it's your fault. Like, go hide or whatever.
Yeah.
And I didn't do the best job that I could have with that storm. I would have loved to have time lapse at wide angle. I would have jumped that barbed wire fence and gotten a nice spot.
Right.
But all I got really was like a one zoom on it because the lightning was terrifying. So I have a healthy respect for it and try not to get struck. I love my wife and kids, and I want to get back to them. But that was one of the like freakiest, like scariest moments ever.
I thought the other freakiest photo that you caught was, and I don't know if it was in here or New Mexico, but you got the leader bolts coming out of the ground that actually they looked like white trees.
Dead trees. They almost look like dead trees.
Yeah, coming out of the ground, the leader strokes. That's amazing.
That was a quarter mile away.
Wow.
So that was one of the closest. I mean, I've had bolts way closer, but not maybe on camera. But yeah, that one I was safely in my car. I mean, the lightning coming in on that storm, and that was in New Mexico.
Yeah.
It was intense, and there was no rain, but it was striking kind of around, and I jumped out, panned the camera over where the storm was moving by, jumped back in, and then that one happened. And thank God, and that one has been, I'm really proud of that photo because it's in the lightning conferences and journals by the lightning dudes, Cummings and the other guy, Kreider, I think.
Right.
And so that one has been it was very sharp.
Yep.
I knew right where I was on Google Maps, knew what lens I used and camera. They could measure everything to get the exact height of every streamer on there. It was
super educational. Yeah. I mean, it's in academia, and it's going to stay there for a long time because it's something to study, that's for sure. So you started in Arizona. You make trips all the time to the Midwest now. Yeah. Do you have a preference? Is Arizona still your place? I know that's hard to ask.
Yeah, it is
because
hard to
they're different storms. I mean, back east it's tornadoes, but here it's lightning and dust storms.
I feel like because I'm a father, that if I had to pick, I would just stay here because I usually get to come home every night.
Yeah.
I might be tired because I chase till 3 a.m, 4 or 5 in the morning, but I still get up, take the kids to school. I did have a day this year where I rushed back. Did not sleep. It was a great day. We had storms south side of Phoenix early in the morning, dropping bolts like I'd never seen before. And I had been in New Mexico the night before, drove all the way home, and then I pull in, I had to take my kids' first day of school that day. Yeah. And then I went to sleep after that or something. So I was like patting myself, like, Father of the Year, look at me. I chased all night and took my kids to school. Yeah. But no, I think because of that, I would rather probably focus here. But it's really hard because the storms on the plains are absolutely bonkers. I mean, seeing this year, I saw probably the most maybe kind of photogenic tornadoes that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And I take people, tour guests and take them chasing, and every tour we saw a tornado. And a couple of them, it was the one down in Texas by Fort Stockton where I had the camera crews and stuff with me. It was incredible. I mean, we pull up on we get on an overpass where we got this view of I-10. It was I-10 in Texas.
Okay. Yeah.
Cars going by and the storm is going, and I'm looking at it, and I've gotten to the point where I'm like, it's almost any minute now, guys. Like, I'm looking at this going, that wall cloud is spinning, there's a clear slot, and then sure enough, like, this funnel comes down, and we just see the whole thing form and start spinning up on the ground, and it goes up this plateau and does this weird motion because the tornado's going up a plateau, which is odd.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, there's like I-10 traffic and big trucks coming, and this is so weird. But it was just we just and there's lightning striking around again that day. It was, and so anyway, hearing everybody who around me like freaking out, hooting and hollering because they never seen something like that. And so out there it's something else. And the motherships and the supercells and the lightning and the flat areas of beautiful green in Montana. It's so hard to pick. So don't make me pick.
Okay, I won't make you pick. But there are, I will say this: there's a lot of folks out there storm chasing, and I say, without apologizing at all, you started out as being one of the better ones in Arizona, and literally you're one of the better storm chasers in terms of what you bring back when you're in the Midwest too, and that sense of accomplishment must feel pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean, people look to you.
Yeah, they do, and it's I'm always humbled by it. I know it because people will come up to me. I mean, this is just really random, but I was at Legoland 3 or 4 years ago with my family, and I was in the store looking at Legos, and a guy walked up to me, and he's like, "Are you Mike?" do you chase storm? I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like, I'm in California and Legoland. How would you even know who I am? He's like, follow you on Twitter. Your stuff's great. Whoa. Okay, so that was really weird. And then I just saw him a week or so ago at an event on a Friday, and his whole family's there. I'm like, are you serious again? Anyway, but it was just, so that stuff happens, and it's been, for me, it's amazing because I really just have a passion for it, and I love it. And I think, you know, from that, I've told people, hey, if you want to be able to do this, you know, really well at a high level, you got to kind of have this undying passion to be almost addicted to it, or very addicted to it.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I am addicted to it, and I think that's what's allowed me to kind of, you know, take it to a different level. And maybe because of, you know, doing the time-lapse stuff with, I really think my photos were fine, but once I did the time-lapse films where it was to music and it would invoke emotions, you know, I've always grown up loving, you know, sci-fi films, Interstellar with the soundtracks. You know, I grew up, my brother and I would listen to Star Wars and the Superman soundtracks and all these things.
Yeah.
And when I could marry a great soundtrack to Storms, you know, it invokes emotions. I mean, I get people commenting on YouTube, you know, daily still of films I made in 2017 going, I cried at the end of this or something. I'm like, really?
And that was me.
Yes, you.
No, so seriously, because the search for Ticity Michael Binsky, and you'll see a whole bunch of. I think you've had 7 or 8 of them now.
I think I did Vorticity 5, but
Okay,
I started
5,
off with like the Chase,
That's
and
right.
the Chase 2, and then
Yeah.
Pursuit is the one called Pursuit is the one that's got like 2.5-3 million views, like my most viewed one, and people still watch it to this day for some reason, and there's great stuff in it. But I think that's, as a filmmaker, it's, you know, anyone who probably even makes like a movie, probably after they've edited it 1,000 times,
Right.
seen everything, they don't. It's hard to connect with it because you knew what went on behind it. But other people just sit down and watch it with like a glass of wine in their home theater. They get pulled into it because they don't know what they're going to see. So I like hearing that because I don't. It's hard for me to like feel that way.
Yeah, I did have that a couple of
amazing.
times in you know, your Vorticity stuff because. Well, it's amazing. That's all I'll say.
I appreciate
and
that.
it's the way of bringing Mother Nature together, which is amazing, with this amazing photography and, as you say, music and stuff like that. So, before I start promoting all the places people can find your stuff, do you have any one tip for somebody who wants to go out and shoot a thunderstorm in Arizona? Well, next year, because we're probably not going to get too many more this year.
Although there was lightning Tucson like
That's
this week,
right,
or
that's right.
Monday or something. I was like, what?
Do you have to have one of those cameras that has a lightning receptor thing that snaps the light? You don't.
I mean, honestly, like if you just want to kind of get your feet wet and see what it's like without having to spend any money, everybody's got a cell phone that does slow-mo.
Yeah.
240 frames a second. Some people's probably got a better phone that does even more.
Yeah.
But if you go out after a storm, shoot it in slow-mo, and if your lightning strikes, that'll look really cool in video. And then you can even like do a still frame from that, capture it. I mean, it's kind of like a really basic thing of, okay, that's cool. I see what it looks like here. Now maybe I actually want a real camera and try to do this more. So it's kind of a good way to kind of get your feet wet. And but maybe, you know, you follow some people, Lori Grace Bailey in Tucson. She has like a Facebook page, Tucson Storm Chasers. She'll post forecasts. I have a Patreon page that I'm all protective, and I got people that will like, that I kind of say exactly where I'm going and stuff, so I kind of keep it a little bit behind the scenes. And so I try to do forecasts every day. If you really want to get into it, just look for those people that are kind of out there chasing. Listen to Royal and April talking about what's going to happen today. Go to the National Weather Service website, read what they think is going to happen, to kind of see where, you know, okay, there's gonna be storms down by Casa Grande maybe tonight, so I'll go down there and see what happens.
But I will say that you know, you should have been a meteorologist. To me, you are a meteorologist because of the fact that you on the days there are storms, you know what's going on out there because you've been sort of zeroing in on that for several years, and that's your thing.
It's honestly like sometimes, because I am a photographer and sometimes it's I'll read a discussion or I'll start listening to a video about skew-tees and I'll get to a point where I'm like, no, I can't. I don't want to know anymore. I can't do it. And I love all of it, but then I look at stuff and I'm amazed at what I actually know that I kind of just forgotten I know. And even, I mean, last year and this year we had a couple days where central Arizona, right around Casa Grande, Stanfield, there was 40 knots of effective shear.
Yeah.
And that's stuff that maybe 6 years ago, I wouldn't be paying attention that much. I would probably just get lucky. Like, oh, wow, what's this doing today?
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking for that stuff, and it makes you get excited for those days and to plan accordingly and know what to do and kind of how to react and what you're looking at. And it can just change everything, and it puts you in the right position, you know, for better pictures when you know what's going on.
That's amazing. All right, so where do we find you? MichaelBinsky.com.
MichaelBinsky.com, which should be back on Google because it was off for a little while.
Okay.
It's very frustrating, but if you look up my name on Instagram and Facebook and X and Threads,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
and
You
YouTube,
can find you.
YouTube
Just
and
search-
Vimeo.
just
Just search
search-
my name.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
it's a very rare last name, Olbinski, and you'll just see a bunch of annoying links pop up.
Well, not really. And pro tip, if you ever feel the urge to order one of Mike's shots of lightning, or, I mean, it's more than just lightning out there, believe me, get the metal finish.
Metal's great.
The metal's great.
It depends on what it looks like,
Yeah.
but we actually have, and my wife let me print a big lightning bolt striking superstitions and put it in this new edition we did in our house. And it was a black and white bolt hitting Lost Dutchman, and did it in black and white on a big canvas, and it looks pretty
It
good.
looks
So
good, too.
sometimes
Yeah.
they can look good, but the metal prints, if you have good light on them, man, they look great.
They pop.
They pop.
They pop, that's for sure. We're going to do this again because there's a million things I want to talk to you about Storm Chasing.
Yeah.
That's okay, right?
Let's do it again before
Yeah.
like next season
Let's-
or whatever. Talk about what's
Yeah.
going on.
We'll talk about the tours that you've got coming up,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And
Sure.
in the meantime, don't work too hard on the weddings. And who knows, maybe we'll get a thunderstorm or two. You get some lightning, man.
Maybe. I would just like some rain.
Yeah,
that would be great, right?
Rain and snow would be great. That's
Yes,
for
that would
sure.
be good.
Yeah, hey, thanks for coming by.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Michael Minsky, everybody.
This is Beyond the Green Screen, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.